Alabama. We're 10 minutes away.
It'd be so cheap to live in Alabama.
All right, I forget you guys can't see it yet. So we're talking about human information processing today. There are a total of 14 slides, and 2 of those are the title and the overview slide. So there's not a lot of slides, and so we should get out early today. We are going to do a couple of things that are a little bit more interactive, but we won't spend too much time on those. So this is the human information processing model. If we just take a look at it for a minute, we have sensory processing, perception, which leads to working memory, and then hopefully if you're getting deep sleep every night, and then formation of long-term memory, which feeds back into perception, but then also into other areas. Response selection, response execution, and then there's the system, and it will provide some sort of feedback to you. Then you'll sense it, perceive it, and you'll repeat again. There's also attention resources, and we're going to talk about some of these things, not everything, but these are important parts of the human information processing model. And later we will get to signal detection and some other ideas, not in this lecture. We'll have an entire lecture dedicated to signal detection. So we won't get into them in detail today. We'll save that for later. How many senses do we have? Some people have 6, right? Just kidding. I should have 5. I wish I had 6. That would be like if you could see.
You would see ghosts.
Or you can predict the weather.
Yeah. I have a feeling in the very near future we'll have people who, we'll have implants that'll let people see in infrared and stuff like that. But they already do that for for like someone who's blind. And so this is a tangent. It won't be long, but the brain is so amazing. Now these systems don't work great yet, but I'm sure they'll get better and better. So for people who are blind, they have a special camera that they've done this special camera that receives light, just like camera is the same idea as your eye. And they basically, all they did is they connected the signals from the camera to people's brains directly into the brain, basically. And at first the brain is like, what is this? Over time, though, the brain learns to interpret the signals sent from the camera, and they can start to make out shapes and see.
You're telling me there are cyborgs in this world?
Oh yeah, actually there are. And there are prosthetics that are being developed that have sensation. It's amazing. So
Until electronics take over the world.
I can see that in the not too distant future. I'm sure the military is like, ooh,
I gotta get a bunker.
Night vision goggles like implanted in soldiers' brains or something, so like they can see. No.
Yeah. Oh, I've been meaning to watch it.
No, is it? Okay.
I mean, it's like
I need a list of things I need to watch.
well, partially it's like extremely screwed. Like it's just mentally a mind fuck. But there's a couple of technological episodes, like technology-based episodes in that show. And yeah, it's like really interesting how they do it. Like one of the episodes, I believe it was they had like these kind of like cognitive memory cells essentially implanted to the brain, and then like something with their eyes. I don't remember what they did, but essentially they could rewind all the way up to whenever they basically get the chip in,
Wow.
And they can catch every single small detail. They can zoom in on pieces that they didn't even realize that they caught on, like, through their field of vision. Yeah, a dude finds out that his wife cheats on him that way, but that's beside the point.
So that's interesting. Well, yeah. Like your brain, if your brain was connected to the cloud in that way somehow, then suddenly your ability to store memories would just like, I think I mentioned this, but I remember my neuro professor in medical school was saying that if our brains picked up the same amount of detail on the entire retina that we do at that focal point, when what you're actually looking at, you can see that in detail, high resolution, but everything else in the field of vision kind of, degrades. If you could see everything in that amount of detail, then our brains would have to be, I can't remember, it was like 10 times bigger or something to be able to process it. Anyway, so instead of having big, huge brains, we just got good at moving our eyes to where we're actually paying attention. And we'll talk about attention. But that's interesting. I like I said, I need a list of movies and shows that I need to watch. I don't have one. Okay. All right. Well, I like thought-provoking media. Okay.
It's good though. It's so good.
So sensation, we have auditory. What is that? Auditory is hearing. Visual, obviously tactile would be, yes. There's also though, well, I'm going to bring up, so these are the typical, like in an industrial environment, but taste and smell could come in handy too. Any thoughts on a job, like an occupation where taste and smell might be important for your job or your survival?
You're a tea taster,
Okay.
so you gotta make sure where all the like ingredients are from and that they're super tasty.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that would be a cool job.
There's actually people called nosers who smell the wine and give you the ingredients.
Wow.
It's the most amazing thing your freak exists.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be called a noser though.
So also I'm thinking of more generic industrial environments, like if there was a gas leak. Now, if it's an odorless gas, then you're sorry, or like odorless, colorless, then yeah, you're hopefully you have, they call them sniffers, but hopefully you have a monitor or something that's like, get out. But a lot of them do have an odor, and so being able to smell that would be important. We're going to talk about a chef later, so taste, and they've got a lot. It's not for survival necessarily, like the taste and the smell part.
There's
But
such thing as taste testers.
no, yes. But we're going to use a chef as an example later. So something called STSS, short-term sensory store. It's a type of short-term memory. It has it here in the process in the model. And sensation and perception are broken out as distinguishable items in the model. So, you can read that as well, but I want you to think about and explain to me why you might break those out. What's the difference between sensation and perception?
Like perception's how you interpret, like good or bad, fight or flight.
Good. So the sensation would be, the sensory would be like if we're talking about a camera, it's the camera itself, the lens, and I don't know how they work exactly, but whatever is capturing the image, that is the sensation. The perception is how you, like you said, interpret is a good synonym there. How you interpret the image that's captured, or how you interpret Um, I think I mentioned this before, but our muscles have stretch sensors in them, and those help us perceive where our limbs are in space. So when you are flexing something, you can start to feel the tension on that muscle or tendon. Anyway, so even while we're moving our limbs in space, those help our brain put together an estimate of where that is in space, even if you can't see it. If you've ever, if you couldn't see something on your back, but you have an itch, you can usually get it without seeing where it is. Your brain knows because of all those sensory inputs, and you've learned, you could scratch that spot on your back without looking and seeing, because you just know. Well, I mean, I say you just know, but your brain is processing a bunch of information that you don't usually think about to pinpoint where that is. Anyway, so that's the sensation. The perception is your interpretation. Response selection, also decision making. So after you've perceived something, and hopefully it's going to go into long-term memory, then you've got to decide what to do about it. Think about a pilot as an example. Let's say there's an alarm that goes off. How might they sense that alarm?
Or flashing light or
Okay, so that's an example of the three senses we talked about. So you've got an audible, a visual, and a tactile response. What do you think would be the most effective? So it would depend, but I would say if you can combine all of them, that's more effective than just one, right? I think it would kind of depend on the person, but it also depends on what else is going on and what else they are doing in that moment. And we will talk about that a little bit more later today. But so they'll sense it, and then their perception. So big red flashing light, usually most people are going to perceive that as exactly. Oh, a problem. If it was a big green flashing light, how would people perceive that? See, so that's a point where perception is important. So you can sense the light, but based on the color, you perceive it as something different. So green flashing, maybe it's not, you're like, oh, okay, keep going.
usually you're good.
All right.
Usually.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, that's generally green is, because of traffic signals, we interpret green to mean, okay, you're good to go, and red as stop. There's a problem. So we would perceive it. So let's say it's the big red flashing light or the stick shaking, whatever, it is for, holy cow, you need to do something, something's wrong. Then once that's sort of logged and understood, you got to make a decision. Okay, what do we do about this flashing alarm? And then you actually do it. So you might gather other information that's relevant. The light's going off, so the pilot may check other instruments and monitors to see, okay, try and get a better sense of what's going on, a better understanding of what the true problem is. And then, all of that, this happens in like a second or, a couple of seconds. So it's all very quickly, but then you've got to, you're usually, I'm having a brain fart, but usually you have a few options of actions that you could take. You've got to decide between them. And I can't think of the word, but your brain is having a debate with itself in half a second, like that or that. What is the probability of having a successful outcome if I do that one versus what's going to happen if it doesn't? What is the severity of the outcome if I do this but it doesn't work? what, so all of that goes on in like half a second. If you're, if the pilot and having that alarm go off. So you're weighing risks. So you're weighing the probabilities of the outcome you want versus the severity of the consequence, all in, yes, milliseconds. So that goes on, your brain has that debate, weighing the options, you make a decision, and then you apply it. And experience and biases will have a big effect. Dang it, I didn't think about maybe an example of that beforehand, but if anyone can think of one where someone's experience, it could be aviation, it could be anything else, your experience beforehand biased your decision in a certain way, and maybe that's for good, or maybe it was for bad.
There's that issue. There was one issue of that where on the Deepwater Horizon that I wrote about for my capstone, that the reason that they didn't believe that there was a blowout when it was all signs pointing to it was because this experienced night tool pusher turned around and says, "Oh, don't worry about that. That's just this annular leak. This happens all the time."
Okay.
And so they're like, "Oh, he knows what he's talking about. Let's go with that." And it was literally about 10 minutes later, all hell broke loose and a blowout exploded, basically.
So the system sort of cried wolf. I mean, because, and that's, if you look at like false positives and false negatives for an alarm or any sort of test to detect failure or an anomaly, both are bad. You don't want false positives or false negatives. And that's an example of maybe not a false positive exactly, but
They didn't think it was a blowout. There was a lot of other biases that came in on top of basic physics. Very sad.
so I can think of, let's see, what is it? It's the worst aviation disaster in history.
There's a lot of those.
Tenerife, is that
Yeah,
Tenerife?
it is.
Yeah, so you can imagine if, I think one of the root causes was that the dynamic between the captain and co-pilot at that time, crew resource management, well, there wasn't crew resource management at that time. It's because of that incident that we have it, but that dynamic had probably been enforced over years and years and years. Captain has, has a final say. Yeah, captain rules. Whatever captain says goes. And that had reinforced through experience, reinforced to the co-pilot that, like, there's no point in me saying anything, or, so when he did mention, hey, we should wait. Let's not take off yet. And so the captain waited, but then the captain's like, where are you going? And even right there, his experience was that even if I do something, the probability of success is really low. Of intervening with the captain and saying, no, let's wait. All of his experience had indicated that that's not effective. It's not going to do anything. So these are, there are other areas. So we'll also talk about psychophysics. So we're not going to get into detail on some of these. Motor control and reaction time are also key here. Not that, can you improve these in a human?
Increase or speed up the reaction time.
Yes. So we can improve those to an extent, right? We're not machines. There are certain things we're not going to be able to do. But if you look at a professional athlete, say Jerry Rice, maybe that dates me. Does everyone know who Jerry Rice is? Oh, dang it. Okay, I'm very dated. I just dated myself. So he is a Hall of Famer, was a Hall of Famer wide receiver, on the San Francisco 49ers when Steve Young was there. So it was like they had a good quarterback, a good receiver, and so that was a good combination. But anyway, imagine any receiver in football, the amount of processing, motor control, reaction time that goes into catching a football. We don't think about it. It's all like second nature, and it's kind of been, it's not automated, but it's I mean, in a way, it is kind of automated. We don't have to consciously think about a lot of things. So imagine, you're running down the field. This ball is flying through the air. All the things that you have to do to make sure it falls in your hands, and you keep running. So the process for walking, that memory is stored actually in our spinal cord. So not everything, but not all that. But I mean, the basic motor control for walking is stored as memory in our spinal cord. And what might be the advantage of A, it being in the spinal cord, and B, having that automated so we don't have to consciously think about every single muscle that's moving when we walk. Okay, yeah, so you can walk and chew gum or, something else, not gum. Okay, good. So yeah, that frees up cognitive, our attention, so that we can do other things. Why might you want it in the spinal cord instead of in your brain somewhere?
Less space it has to travel.
Yeah, so it's faster. You get a faster response, feedback there. All right, so 4 types of attention: selective, focused, divided, and sustained. We're going to talk about each of those. Selective. So that's when we're looking at multiple, it's called channels, but basically you could imagine we're looking for multiple things for a selected event. So if you has anyone seen an industrial control room?
On TV.
Maybe. Well, I'm sure. Well, like crime shows or whatever, or maybe it's more like spy shows. I don't know, but like if they go into a situation room or control room, and there's like all these screens on the wall. I'm sure you've seen something like that. So can you be paying attention to all of the screens at once? No, right? You can't. But you can be kind of looking for, if the screens are big enough and the system is designed well, you could be kind of just like looking it over for any anomalies, any sort of, just like with a pilot. I don't know how many different instruments and like displays and things there are, but there's a lot. You can't pay attention to them all. And so just like with the alarm, you might be able to catch something in the periphery, if there's an alarm, but anyway, the example here is control panels, looking for normal versus non-normal. So if the screen is like blinking red, you can focus on that one. Reading a map while you're driving, you have, you're probably, this is suggesting that you might be paying more attention to the map while you're driving, if you're selectively looking at the map. So there's a couple different types of stress that can affect our selective attention. Load stress increases the number of channels. So if you go from 4 displays to 10, you're not going to be able to, you can't give as much attention. And then also speed stress. So if you increase the rate of the signal presentation. So, I'm thinking of the control panel. If And a lot of times these displays are just showing kind of data in real time and for some process. And there's like two control bars where if it's above this bar or below that bar, then we have a problem. So as long as it's in the middle, then we're good. So if it's going slow, then you have more opportunity to pay attention to everything. But if that data were streaming really quickly across the screen, you can't. There's less that you can focus on. But generally, load stress, so increasing the number of channels, degrades performance more than the speed stress. So let's look at an example. Now I'm going to ask for a favor. If you have seen this before, say nothing. Maybe you've all seen this before. Has everyone seen this before?
Is this the monkey experiment?
It's a basketball experiment.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you've seen it.
I haven't touched.
Okay, so your test here for the selective attention is to count the number of times the basketball is passed between
Oh,
people.
yes, I've seen this one.
Okay, dang it.
Damn.
Everyone's seen it.
Oh, well, we might as
We'll still watch it. I mean, once you know, then like it's almost impossible to watch it with the original. But
It was a bear and the curtain changed color.
Dang.
okay, I forgot that they specify that it's only people with white. Yes.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Basically the same color. Oh yeah, and someone leaves the screen.
Oh, it's the monkey.
Yeah, this is the gorilla. Even like, yeah.
This one's too, I guess. You really don't notice it.
You
though.
really
No, if you are,
counting all the white.
yeah, if you are trying to count,
That's true.
he's like, even he bangs his chest and, um, yeah. So, I mean, I think most people, the first time they do this, they don't see it.
Oh, I got fooled by it too.
I did.
There was another video that Chris Gallimore had us watch, and maybe it was Gallimore, and it was like there's a dead body on the ground, and the detective was talking to all the suspects, and you had to count how many things were like different, because as he was talking to this one person, they were like changing things out. They showed it in the end. It's really interesting. I'm like, I saw none of this. None.
Interesting. I should, because everyone's seen the gorilla, I'll have to try and find that one. So
We're all psychologists.
when you're putting the effort into focusing on one specific thing, it kind of drowns out the other things, right? The other sensory inputs. That's why, does anyone know why itching works and like at least it kind of relieves the itch temporarily? So we have receptors in our skin for itchy feeling, whatever that is, and then pain. So what's happening is you're causing pain, and the pain signal overrides the itch signal going to your brain. And so because it hurts, it's kind of funny, but because it hurts, it actually feels better than the itch. But if you, I mean, I guess I'm sure there are like some Japanese or Chinese monks who train themselves to where they don't feel any pain, and it's all just the way they manage their attention and those inputs. So, just some suggestions if you want to improve selective attention. Use fewer channels. You want to slow them down as well. Make sure that you direct attention to the important channels, kind of prioritize somehow. You can provide a preview of channels if there's a signal that's about to occur. And place the displays close together, we have better vision as we center there. So focus attention. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. This is interesting. So it's pretty much impossible to focus on one source if there's another source within 1 degree of the visual angle, which I find really interesting. So some examples. Now, this is not necessarily the visual part, but these tasks require a lot of focus. If you're trying to read in a busy room where people are talking, or for me, like I like to listen to music sometimes while I'm trying to do work. If there's dialogue, if there are lyrics in the music, it gets harder for me to do any word processing because it comes into my brain and my brain starts processing the words I'm hearing. Huh? Yeah, sometimes that happens. So yeah. So I usually do instrumental because that lets my, well, yeah, there you go. So, so we're going to talk about multiple resources in just a minute, but that's one way to be able to multitask is changing the sense, changing the parts of your brain that are doing the processing. So like, I can't be talking and reading at the same time because it uses similar parts of your brain. Something I'm trying to think if that's right. I think that's right. I can't be writing and talking. Yeah, you just those parts of my brain overlap too much, and I can't do it. I have to like do one or the other. But I can do, I can chew gum and read and talk at the same time. Although maybe that's kind of that was the speaker, right? Driving a car in bad weather. I know I'm just like stressed out or nervous when, or like in lots of heavy traffic and I need to get somewhere. It gets kind of draining mentally, and it's because you're putting so much effort into that, your focused attention. Just some recommendations to enhance it. You want to make the channels distinct, what you need to focus on versus what you don't. So that's kind of what we were talking about. Like me hearing lyrics and typing, those are not distinct enough for my brain. I needed something else. So like just instrumental is distinct enough from words that I can do that. Physically separate or reduce the number. This just means to make it easier to pay attention to. Salient. Divided attention. So this is about multitasking. Is multitasking possible? So there are people who say one way or the other. And there are some people who say, well, it depends on the sex of the person. Like women can and men can't. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Like, are carbs really what makes me fat? I don't know. But like, is that what I need to avoid? I mean,
That could be a lie too.
research says different things sometimes, right? So I'm not saying definitively yes or no that you can or cannot multitask, but I want to talk about how it might happen if you can, or maybe if you can't. Okay. So here's an example: talking on the phone while you're driving, and this is a big thing right now in Yavapai County because they are just about to pass that ordinance. Yeah.
I thought they already did pass it.
Yeah, I guess they did pass it, but it's
When you can.
yeah. Yeah, and if you get in a wreck because you were on your phone, then it's a $250. Yeah.
I really hope those
There's, you can't really.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
maybe
you can.
dash
You
cam?
can
I don't know.
You can look at someone's,
can look at
cell phone and
yeah.
history.
Oh, okay.
That's how they proved a couple of accidents. I remember drunk driving and texting and driving awareness for prom, and they're like, this cop actually went to this kid's phone and found a handwritten text message. That's yeah, just texting and driving.
So this is an example of you're doing two different things at the same time. But what's the difference with this and say me trying to read and talk at the same time? You know, like listening on the phone, talking on the phone, and I'm like reading something that's unrelated to the conversation. So what is the difference between that and then this, talking on the phone and driving? Now, I'm not saying we should talk on the phone and drive. So it helps when you're using different types of responses and different parts of your brain to be able to do multiple things at the same time. Again, I'm not I'm not claiming one way or the other, but also some things require less attention than others. So if you're driving on a straight road down the highway, there's no traffic around, it's just you, and this becomes a little easier, right, than if it's rush hour on I-17 and you're trying to get out of or get into Phoenix, or you know you're going down White Spar Road and it's like this becomes harder, right? Because you've got to divert more attention to the driving part than the talking part. So what I would say is your I guess I'm going to use the term mind's eye. You know, your conscious thought, I think can only be directed to one thing at a time. And when you're multitasking, then you're switching between tasks just really quickly. That's my thought. But if you're doing something, or there are other processes in our body or our brain that are somewhat automated, like walking. Like our spinal cord can take care of the walking part. Like it knows the program. It's programmed in, so we can walk and chew gum or talk on the phone at the same time. It's not that big of a deal. And maybe there is some sort, sometimes referred to as muscle memory, and that is actually a thing. But while driving, now maybe like being alert to dangers on the road is different from muscle memory, but at least you have the muscle memory of accelerator, brake, steering. You've done that so much, you know what to do there. Just visually, it's hard to do two things at once, or impossible. So when you're trying to do two things at once, usually your performance will decline. So there's single resource theory and multiple resource theory of divided attention. I'm going to use multiple resource to sort of contrast with single resource, but I want you guys to think about, take 30 seconds or a minute and think about the does anyone know who Gordon Ramsay is?
Yes.
Okay, I guess I'm uncultured. Like I didn't know who he was until I was preparing for this lecture.
To adults, but so sweet to little kids.
Okay, because you all know who he is, and I was like learning about him. I want you to think about the senses and maybe make a little list somewhere. The responses and what is the other one? Dang it. I don't think the figure I was looking at is in here. But well, think about senses, responses, and just all of the things mentally and physically that a chef does at any given moment in a busy kitchen just to do their job. Okay, so think about that. Start making a list. So what senses are they using? Oh, well, so think about, the types of memory, things that they might have to remember. just, I say memory, things that they might have to remember. That would be important. So think of not just producing what a chef does, which is good food, but also the safety aspect, the interactions with their team, their cook line, all those things. On a busy night, they're going to be doing several things, and some of them simultaneously. So what are those things? So I think I'm going to roll a dice to pick on somebody after you guys have made a list. And believe it or not, I have a 4-sided die. Yeah. Have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? I have not, but
You're a nerd, but yet you're not a nerd. That's like being rude or anything, but it's just like
I'm a semi-nerd. It depends. Anime?
giant bag
Yeah.
full of dice and different colors, different needs for everyone.
No, they go way overboard.
I play Magic is the problem. I don't even play Dungeons and Dragons.
20-sided die. Something like
Yeah,
this.
There's 20?
I have a 20.
And then there's countdown.
Yeah.
So you can count down from 20 and slowly flip your dice over so you can track your life.
Let's see what I've got. Here's the
Oh
20.
my god!
Here's the 12.
3-sided dice. Do you have one of those?
No.
Oh, really?
Wow, that's intense. I have not seen a 3-sided.
I can actually go and grab my dice bag.
Here's
I'll
an
be right
8.
back.
Another. Oh, wait. No, this is a 10. 10-sided, 8-sided, 6-sided, 4-sided. That's another 10. I think I have 2 10-sided. Yeah, 2 10-sided.
You don't own these, right?
I do. I bought them for a class.
Oh, it's not 3-sided. It's 4-sided. No?
Where do you play?
I don't. I mean, I like board games. I just don't take enough. I rarely play them, but I do enjoy playing board games.
So for the memory part, what do you want?
Well, so think about. I guess I'll give you an example. The order of orders as they come in. Okay, but there are other things. Just think about a chef. Like, what? You guys know more about Gordon Ramsay than I do. Yo. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
What's the recipe?
Okay.
What's the smell, taste, and touch of something?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah, he does touch things.
He touches a lot of things, and not inappropriately, but in general.
No. It's usually steaks. He wants to make sure that they're perfectly.
That's how Garrett
Tenderized.
doesn't even. Yep, that's done. And I'm like, what kind of sorcery are you doing here?
There is a way that you can tell
Yeah.
by doing it with your finger, and when you feel it here,
Mm-hmm.
you know it's good.
Yeah, it is some straight up sorcery.
You've got from your thumb to your pinky is basically